Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're going to be unboxing, assembling, and testing Xtool's D1 Pro 20-watt laser engraver. Well, it's funny how things morph, and this all started off because I was looking online to get a new brand. Everything I make, I brand. And they were expensive. I mean, my old one was kind of worn out, so I was looking at them and they're quite expensive. And then my wife brought up the idea of why not a laser engraver, and we started looking into them, and the next thing you know, I end up purchasing this. So before any of you think that it was given to me, no, it was not. I purchased this, so this is not a paid anything. I paid for it. Anyway, I've had a quick look inside the box, but let me, I don't want to waste any time unboxing things. So let's just start off by using the magic of editing and getting this thing unboxed, just like this. And this is pretty much everything that comes in the box. So let's get in and have a little bit of a closer look. So when you finally get everything out of the packaging, you end up with this assortment. You have your 4 main rails, you have your carriage that holds your laser, your 8 extension feet, you have your power supply, your USB cable, of course your 20-watt laser. You have some other cables, some lubricant, manuals, and a quick start guide along with some sample materials, safety glasses to keep your eyes from getting harmed from the laser, and a small tool kit which will hold, or which houses all of the hardware and the smaller tools that you'll need to assemble this. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to start with the frame, and the frame will consist of the 4 red rails. So we can put everything else aside for now and dry fit those rails together. Well, now on one of these rails, you'll notice that there's a tie wrap here which is holding this carriage in place. You'll need to cut that off before you carry on with this frame assembly. So the first thing that we'll start off with is our front rail. And you can tell it's the front rail because it'll have your start button on it. So we'll just place that in the, go figure, the front. The side rails are the ones that have these brackets in it. So we can take those and carefully just place them into our frame, just like that. And then the other one, of course, will go in the opposite side. And then the last piece of your frame will go on the back end. Now it's really hard to kind of mess this up because it really only goes together one way, and the pieces are notched so that they fit perfectly in place where they're supposed to go. Like I said, it's kind of difficult to mess this part up, I think. And once you get it all fit together using the screwdriver that they provide you and the shortest screws or the shortest bolts, we can just thread these in place. And following the manual, I'm not going to go through all 16 screws in their locations, but following the manual, install all 16 screws to secure this frame together. Now the next thing you need are 2 of the bolts that are coated blue, and they will be placed into this back hole here in the back rail of each side of your frame. And what they are for is they will screw into your belt tensioners on the inside. Now guys, don't crank these in because you're going to need to adjust them a little bit later. So for now, just get them started and you'll be fine with that. And then you want to do the same thing for the opposite side. You now want to place your connecting rod, and this is actually your drive rod for your belts. So you want to place this in your front panel assembly. So the first thing you want to do is take your coupling and slide it onto the rod. Now you can take this from here. I have my belt just hanging loosely. We're going to connect it. This has teeth on it that coincide with the teeth of your belt. So you'll just connect it there with your rod. There's a bearing right there. We're going to slide it into that bearing carefully, just like that. And that is now connected. From here, we now need to connect the coupling on the opposite side. So we will carefully slide our coupling over to the end of our rod and onto our motor control here. And if you look down through the slot here, down through the gap, you'll be able to tell when you've got it centered, because you'll be able to see where this rod ends and this one begins. So now before you can tighten this coupling, you need to make sure that these two side brackets that your carriage ride on are at the same level. That way they're not running off kilter. Now the manual says to slide these down all the way until they contact the front plate. That's not happening because actually the limit switches, or the, I guess in this case here, it's the USB switch here, or the port, actually contacts with this bracket on this side and doesn't allow it to go all the way to the bottom. So what I'm going to do is put it all the way to the top, and then once I get them both on the same plane at the top end of our frame, then I can tighten that coupling. Just make sure that you're looking through the gap to see that you have it perfectly spaced and centered on these two rods that you're connecting. And with that done, we can just plug in our cable connection between our control board here and our motor. And we can carry on with the next step in this case, which happens to be dressing in our cables using the provided cable ties down along the bottom of our front rail. Well, you now need your carriage that's going to house your laser, and the first thing that you want to do is cut the 3 white cable ties that hold all of this together. And in here, tucked neatly inside, there is a plug, and this plug will get inserted right at the back of your motor. It'll get plugged in right here. There we go, just like that. So the next thing we want to do is place this carriage with our mounting bracket, our laser mounting bracket, which is this one here, facing to the inside of our assembly, and lining it up with our brackets and using 4 of the red coated screws or bolts. We will bolt this in place and secure it onto our side rail brackets. And in the one end with a blue colored screw, just like we did before, we're going to install this into our tensioning mechanism for our top belt. So at this point, you just want to connect your control cables. So you will connect this little small one right down here. This is for your limit switch. You just want to make sure that you put them in correctly. And the other ones are simply enough connected down here at the bottom. And they're color coded. You can't mess it up. Red in the red, yellow in the yellow, white in the white. And they will go just at the bottom end of this circuit board here. So get those plugged in, and then we can move on from there. And now it's just a matter of a little bit of cable management here, using the provided cable ties to run your cables underneath to keep them out of the way of the carriage. And at this point, we can attach our air assist attachment into our 20-watt head. And it just goes in through this side slot here, right into the side of the laser housing. And there's a threaded hole. You just screw it in place. And with the air assist installed, we can place our laser into our bracket, tighten it up with this thumb screw here just to keep it in place, and then our final cable will get snaked in here into the retaining clip, just like that, and then we can plug it in at the back of our laser. And that is the assembly complete. The only thing we need to do now is connect the power source and plug it into our computer. With your laser connected to your computer, you now want to head to Xtool.com, and right at the top you can click on Software. This is to download their Creative Space software, and you can choose the platform you need, whether it be for Windows or for Mac. Just click on one of these little icons here and you can download the software. Chances are you'll have to update the firmware of your laser, but it's as simple as following the on-screen prompts, and it shouldn't take you very much time at all. Well, I did purchase a couple of extra items with my laser, one of them being Xtool's honeycomb working panel. And what this does, it's a steel panel that gives you the ability when you're cutting things to be able to cut right through without applying the heat to your lower surfaces. It's raised up and it does a much nicer job of venting out the smoke, venting out the heat. I also got their air assist pump. Now, this laser does not come with an air assist, and while the 20-watt version does come capable of accepting an air assist, it does not come with it, so I've purchased that. As well, these little magnets, they came with the honeycomb working panel, but they're not mentioned. They're not mentioned on the website. They're not mentioned in the products as to what the items are in the case that you get. They just came in there. And the best I can find online is that they're hold-down magnets. They would have to be for some serious thin material, but what I've been doing is I've been using it to block in the piece of wood to keep it from moving, but I've never had an issue with anything moving. So I'm going to end up mounting this whole thing to a 3/4 inch thick piece of plywood, but I have no experience with this laser. So even with zero experience, I've still managed to cut or burn or engrave a few successful images and some unsuccessful as well. But this one here was a successful version. I've also cut some mounting brackets, designed them and cut them to hold the laser legs exactly where I want them at all times. And as well, I've cut a few patterns to give me an example of what my wood burning label would be, as well as, a little sea turtle, and just kind of goofing around with it and playing. But there's a big connection between the speed of the laser, the millimeters per second, and the power of the laser, 0 to 100. So from 0 watts up to 20 in this case. The faster the laser, well, it's a bit confusing. If the laser is going really slow, but it's a high power, you get a really deep, dark burn. In fact, you will cut. And if the laser is going faster at a higher power, you get a lighter tone. So I ended up going on the software and making a test pattern burn where it will give me my laser power across the top and the speed of the laser on the side, just as a general reference. So I will be burning these tiles in all different materials so that when I actually go to engrave something on a project, I can look at the material that I'm using and pick kind of the color or the depth that I want of the engraving. And I know that, say if I want this color right here, I would need to run the laser at a 30% power at 25 millimeters per second. So the whole thing is a learning process, and I'm getting there. So let me get this mounted to my board, and when we're done, I'll show you what I ended up with. And while it's nothing special or nothing fancy, it will definitely help to keep everything together. Those brackets that I made are on all 4 corners mounted to keep the laser engraver steady and always in the same place. The power supply and the air assist are mounted just with tie straps or cable ties to keep them where I want them to be, and yet have it so that they're removable should I need to remove things. I'm thinking that I might make a box that will mount here in this blank space that will permanently mount to this board, and that box will be for things like, well, the risers and different accessories, the glasses, the tools, spare parts, that sort of thing. So I'm thinking that may be added up here. But why do I want this mounted in these feet to keep it always in the same place? Well, I'm thinking that while this honeycomb panel is used for cutting, for burning, you just need the plywood underneath. And I think what I would like to do is on the computer, make myself a grid and then have it laser that grid right into the plywood so that when I'm laying my pieces down for lasering, I know that they're square to the laser frame and to the laser's path of travel. That way I never have to worry about a piece being off center or off kilter. I always have that grid with measurements on the sides in order to help me line things up. Well, there you go, guys. This is basically the tool, and I don't know, I think it's pretty cool. And there you have it. Xtool's D1 Pro 20 watt laser engraver. Guys, I know nothing about laser engravers. What I do know is that there is a bit of a learning curve, and I have been playing with this thing for about a week, and that learning curve is getting a little more shallow, so I'm getting through it. But it does take time, it does take patience, and just like anything new in the shop, you need to learn it. Is this for everybody? Probably not. The price point is quite expensive. At least for me, it's quite expensive. Blew the living crap right out of the show's budget. But with that being said, it's also a great tool to add to my arsenal here in the shop. I'm hoping that over time, I will be able to make a few items and sell them and possibly make up the cost of the laser. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but I'll keep you guys informed. The accessories for this thing, the air assist. Why do you need air assist? A lot of the laser cutters out there actually come with the air assist, but for some reason Xtool has made it an option. What the air assist does is it cools the laser as it's burning in and prevents the outside areas around the laser engraving from yellowing or toasting, we'll say. Keeps them cooler and keeps it a much cleaner burn. Keeps, say, the maple a lot whiter than yellowing it when there is no air assist. So it's definitely, you know, a bonus to have. The honeycomb panel is pretty much just for the cutting aspect, to raise it up and allow it to cut right through. But worst case scenario, if you didn't have that, you could just raise your piece up on a couple blocks of wood. As long as it's stable and as long as you focused your laser for that height, it'll work just fine. Once the piece is done cutting, it drops through the bottom and you're done. Guys, I see a lot of potential for this in the shop for various projects, especially for me anyway, for my models, for the scale models that I produce here, both on the show and just for myself. I can see custom logos being like on that 1928 Ford stake bed truck. I could see company logos on the side. I could see all kinds of things. I could see engraving around the tires for, like, you know, just light engraving for, say, Goodyear or something like that. I could really see this going to the extreme with me. But that's me, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you could use it for. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's content. I'll let you know as time goes on and as I learn with this how I like it and how it's performing. Another accessory that I did get was the RA2 Pro, which is the rotary tool, which allows you to laser cylindrical objects such as cups, glasses, dowels, whatever you want, anything that's round or off shape, even Christmas balls. So with that attachment, that could really open things up as well. And you know what? Most likely on next week's show, you're going to see me demonstrate that attachment, and I'll show you how it sets up and how you use it. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's content. If you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click that bell and then you're not going to miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope you found this interesting, and more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another Alternative Tuesdays.